Hi everyone, it's Kaylee here. I hope you are all doing all right today. Today I'm going to be chatting with my dad. I'm just going to try to pin this comment really quick while all of you are joining in. Oops, I am so sorry. I flipped around the camera again. I do that so much. Okay, so I'm going to join in with my dad, and we're going to be having a little just waiting it for him to join in. I'm glad he got it figured out. Oh, I hope it joins. I hope it joins. This is my dad's first time on Instagram, really. So it might take a little bit, but we're gonna get him up here and we're gonna chat with him today. Oh, but I hope all of you are doing well, or as well as you can. Yesterday was a beautiful day here. Had some time to relax, and I hope you guys had a nice day as well. Just waiting for my dad to join. I know there might be some issues on his end. He's not the most tech savvy. I will point him out for that bit. Had to talk to my stepsister to get him to join. And so hopefully we can get him up here so we can chat. Hey, I am doing well. I'm hanging in there. I got some sun yesterday, which was nice. Definitely a good day to relax. So yeah, just kind of doing my thing, you know? But I'm gonna see. My dad just said, "I see you," and I said, "I'm gonna try to message him to make sure everything's okay." Um, I'm just gonna say you. It says the request was sent. This is the difficulty that comes with trying to join. Here, we're gonna try again. Oh, we gotta love technology sometimes. There he is.
Hello, hello.
Hi, Dad. How are you?
Good, good. Sorry for the delay.
It's
Oh,
all good. Uh, Definitely thank Zoe for setting this up so you can
okay.
do it. So let's just get right into it. So how are you doing with everything that is going on in the world right now in terms of Black Lives Matter?
Um, I'm always been under the impression that all lives matter. I'll say that. Particularly, my experience has been growing up Black is all that I know. But I was fortunate to have parents who, coming out of the '60s, and their parents coming out of the '50s and earlier, um, developed me with the mindset of being prepared for living in white America. And by that, I mean, there you might often hear of the talk, which is basically saying, how do you behave, for lack of a better word, um, in the midst of whites, whether it's authority, being the law, keeping your hands on the steering wheel, saying yes, sir, no, ma'am, kind of watch where you are, and always having to kind of be on guard in terms of my behavior, the way I dress, the way I look, the way I act. Those were some of the things that were instilled early on with me, and how to live in this society. The way I spoke, I remember in school, it was often like, you don't talk like you're Black.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it's, my parents, both educators, saying you need to enunciate your words. You need to be able to people to hear what you're saying, um, so that they don't cast you as being less, always having to kind of be better than the average person. That was always kind of instilled in me.
Mm-hmm. I definitely know what you mean by the you don't like talk like you're Black, because I know like being biracial and going to school in Milford, which is predominantly white, a lot of times I got the, oh, well, you don't speak like you're Black, or you don't act like you're Black. So then they always kind of just like shoved that piece off of me and just kind of like blended me in. Besides, when I had my singles in my hair all throughout elementary school, that was something that they definitely had not seen before. So I definitely stood out for that reason. But in terms of um, the issues at hand, why people are protesting, um, like how do you feel about those issues? I know outside of my apartment, my roommate and I, in chalk on our parking spaces, put Black Lives Matter. And Skipper has been very vocal about how he feels about everything going on. He's been to a lot of protests. So overall, how do you feel about those?
Um, you know, the what's going on right now is kind of a revival of the 60s in terms of when blacks were really looking for equality. And during the civil rights, there was a mass movement in terms of blacks were the spearhead, but they also were inclusive and have always been inclusive of ensuring the rights of all. I think what's particular of interest is this whole police, looking at police as the main culprit of the issues facing Black America. I think that the police are an extension of government, which people elect. Blacks have the right to vote. They need to vote more often, more sophisticated in their messaging. They need to be on both sides of the issue to kind of um, bring their values and make their values aware to other people. Basically, whites consider still to be in positions of power. I think that's an important thing. The sitting down to talk with the powers that be, whether it's local, federal, state, people my generation, a little bit older, have been there and have done a lot to bring things to this point. I think people sometimes forget that before you can run, you have to walk and crawl. And although it's been a long time, there's been different generations that then put the next generation, making it better for them to move forward. Uh, I was a police commissioner in New Haven back in the 90s. And prior to that, there was a police commissioner back in the early 80s who was Black, one of the first. And the whole idea was to get into the system and begin bringing changes from the inside, opening up opportunity for more Black officers. Once you get more Black officers in, they get in the ranks, they go up the line of command, they diversify people's train of thought. You see that with some politicians.
Mm-hmm.
The downside is that people are looking for quicker returns. And that's rightly so, based on the history of this country. I think the tragedy is when the efforts of Black Lives Matters gets hijacked by a small group of individuals who take riot or who use it for their own personal gain, as opposed to looking at the mass and the best way to move everyone forward.
Mm-hmm. I for sure feel, I know Zosie and Chesley, Miss USA, Miss Universe, spoke 3 days ago, I believe, about how kind of the way media portrays everything going on. And at some stages, it seems as though that the focus is now going more towards those that are rioting and looting rather than the matter at hand. And I feel like that's something that shouldn't be done, because if we get so stuck on those issues of rioting and looting, which predominantly aren't the people that are trying to peacefully protest and get their voices heard, then that's kind of overshadowing the base issue at hand, and it's the injustice that Black people face. And so I definitely got that from like what you said. So what is the difference of your life growing up as a Black man compared to those as how you envision or think a white man or woman grew up?
I can only speak from the outside as an observation. First of all, I mean, I have to consider the way I was raised.
Mm-hmm.
My parents were the first in their family to go to college. There was always the premise that the next generation is able to do more and give back more. The way I was raised, and hopefully, as I see you doing, are doing so also. With that said, again, there's a lot of, behind the scenes work that goes on, um, just in terms of looking at um, how society looks at you. As I said, being prepared for a job interview, um, anticipate what may happen to you when you're at, a game. Looking at the elements that might be there. Are they dangerous, or is everything calm? Those are all the things that are always going on um, in my mind when I go out. There's never, I have to say, never a real sense of being relaxed in public. Um, I'm always, looked at like, I use the example sometimes, getting in an elevator with a woman who happens to be
Hmm.
white. Some say I've just kind of realized my size. I'm kind of intimidating in size. I've always considered myself a teddy bear. But a lot of people, oh no, big guy. But it's sensing that, and also understanding um, also some of the trauma that women have face being in groups of men, or in situations of just walking down the street getting catcalls. Um, and so I'm cognizant of that.
Hmm.
Um, and so it's you're constantly learning, you're constantly, reliving experiences. How can I do something different, kind of prevent something from happening?
Hmm. So how do you, I'm trying to word this the right way, but since we always say, you said that this is kind of a flashback to how the 60s were, how do you feel as though your experience as a Black man relates to what Black people are experiencing now?
I think it's the same. You have technology, so the information gets out quicker. Yeah, some of the different things are there are more Black middle class than there previous was 30 years ago. You have more Blacks educated. You have Blacks in positions of leadership throughout the government, corporate America. You have Blacks in the military that have, rose to the ranks of generals and things like that. So Blacks are getting into the positions. What I feel most people are still fighting for is inequalities of economic equality in terms of the ability to pass wealth on to their children. The ability that they don't have to worry about their child going out um, from the house and getting stopped and unduly antagonized by police.
Hmm.
Not all police need to, excuse me, not all police, as everyone knows, is bad. What really brings to the forefront, as you mentioned regarding the media, is they sensationalize a situation, one, for their own dollars to get people to watch their shows, but also I believe they have their own narrative that they're trying to push.
Hmm.
Uh, as you probably know, there's always a good and bad, and the big thing in this world is about power and control. Um, so that's things that people have to be conscious of when they watch the news, um, watch who's speaking, and do some research and develop their own opinion. But also, I would have to say, um, be more biblical in terms of God's word and how that all impacts what's going on, and how they can utilize those words from years ago to
Hmm.
themselves.
So, what do you think now? So, I'm going to kind of ask this in phases because I feel the way in the way people view it that are in different age groups, especially like from my age to your age, we all view this situation differently in ways that we can make a change. So, for somebody who, let's say, is like my age, what way do you think we can help push forward our initiative for equality in the best way? What do you think that is?
I think you have to continue to call people on their mistakes, their faults, and do so sometimes in kindness, and sometimes you have to be harsh because some people are a little bit slow. Um, but you also have to provide the solution. There's a certain comfort that I think a lot of whites have because they just haven't experienced being black because it's just something they just physically and they can't do because the way you're born. Hey, you cannot be chose who you're born to or what color you are, and then you exist in this predefined world. So what you can do, continue to do, is advocate for causes that you feel like people first. Um, people can get involved in local government, understand what's going on, and then bring change. Because that's one thing early on I had to learn is that you can have a lot of ideas.
Mm-hmm.
You also have to understand how some people got there so that you can kind of counter their arguments for why things cannot be.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing. I think as as I mentioned, voting is a big thing. Hold local politicians accountable. The laws they put in place are the ones that police enforce. It's not just the police officers. I was reading something here locally just about the initiatives to the Civilian Review Board. As I mentioned, I was a police commissioner. We oversee the police hiring and firing and the policy. About 20 some odd years ago, there was an effort for the Civilian Review Board. However, the big issue is unions affect a lot of that working conditions. And that's not to say all unions are bad, but there are certain things that they do to protect their members.
Mm-hmm.
And so that has to be looked at and how you can adjust that so that when someone is bad, they are removed and not protected, taking away their pension. Is it, your suspension from the force? That doesn't always work. So I think in the case of Floyd, you know, it's a little late, and the community pressure, I feel, also assisted in the raising of charges to second-degree murder. But those things have to be constant. We can't also do well for a little bit and then kind of forget or take your
Mm-hmm.
foot off the pedal. Has to maintain the constant pressure on all officials and even within our community, holding people accountable for their behavior that is detrimental to all Blacks. And then, like, oh,
Okay, I like that. And then I got a question from someone that I want to ask, my manager actually, Esther. So, what advice would you give to young Black men on taking this time working to help make it better? So, for Black men specifically, what can they do to help make this situation better?
I think you have to, that's 14 to 24-year-old range, um, having been there once, um, you you feel like you can take on and handle a lot of stuff. And whether it's physical, mostly I'll just say stick with the physical aspect of it. I think you have to find a couple of people who they can emulate, mentor, and use those people who've kind of went before them, learn from those people's mistakes, and then move forward on especially the things that were very positive that those people were able to accomplish. I think Black men still have to be conscious of their environment. They need to know how to de-escalate the situation with the cops. Um, Getting an attitude, as anyone knows, regardless, kind of just accelerates the situation. It doesn't just have to be a police officer. I think I have to recall when I was at the community center, the Dixville Community House, just working with um, the members, which were predominantly Black. It was in a low-income area of New Haven, traditionally, socioeconomic wise. Um, that there are opportunities out there, and they have to seize those opportunities. Education, the grants, if they play sports, not everyone makes it to the pros, but there's other avenues they can utilize.
Mm-hmm.
The management aspect, the sports trainer. Uh, so be open to possibilities. The other thing is establish relationships. going out of their own comfort zone to encroach upon organizations such as when I did also the Boy, being there was only two blacks in a Jewish Boy Scout group
Mhm.
that you have to make segues into those things that are considered not black. To I would suggest um, to able to move forward, and that you know the other thing is I've learned is that sometimes you have to take those jobs that are not like the suit jobs. Early on, just starting out, I had did some cleaning jobs. I didn't like that. I worked as a busboy. Didn't like that. Thought that was very demeaning. But my dad said, "Now you know what kind of jobs you want. You know, you don't want that type of job. But this is what you need to do. You need to get that education, and these are the things you need to do to get to the jobs you want. Because with the education, you have more opportunities." And the other thing is, as you go to school, one of the things I've learned is that, um, when you really begin to think, you place some portion of the world in jeopardy, and your own world, but other people, when you begin to think, you react. And that's one thing I've always tried to instill upon people when I speak is you have to begin to think because you place some portion of the world in jeopardy with your thoughts.
Mm. Yeah, that's very interesting. I like that. So, my last question for you, and it's kind of a bigger one. I have one more question. So, two questions. So, what advice do you have for me during this time period as your
Well,
daughter?
one, I hope you continue to be who you are. You are maturing fantastically. I like the fact that now we can talk a little bit more on some of our conversations about politics, and you don't seem so frustrated with me talking about my experiences because it's really about instilling upon you some of my experience so you don't have to experience some of the negativeness. Um, Always be cautious. One, because you're a female. Two, because you're intelligent. So you always, again, are a threat. You have your appearance, which is a threat. And you, I was kind of shocked, not somewhat, but just as a father, when you first won the title, with just some of the comments from females. And that's a whole nother conversation in terms of how females are so hard on each other, but especially among whether we are, if you're really black or are you white. And as most people then say, there's a mixture of people and the gene makeup. Um, but it was nice to see that some of your followers, spoke up. But I'm sorry, I didn't realize some people had that much time to make some of those comments under comments, which was just an education in itself. Um, but, you know, do what you're doing, stay involved, find a cause that you really believe in, and that also doesn't question your principles um, and what you know is right. I like to think that your mother and I instilled upon you what's right and wrong, and you have to live by those choices. And as you know, not everything comes easy. There's a lot of work involved, and that through the hard work, the reward comes.
Okay, thanks, Dad. My my last question for you is this is kind of like a big question, so don't have to like think too hard into it. But what change overall, or like what is your hope for the world?
Well, I would be cliche to be world peace because it's just not part of the human nature to be exclusively at peace with self. Um, I really would just hope that aside from the COVID-19 that we overcome, it was nice to see that for a moment there wasn't a lot of violence around because everyone was kind of like, "Oh, this virus doesn't play. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't care if you are Islamic, doesn't care if you're Chinese, it doesn't care if you're black, white. It's an equal opportunity virus."
Mm-hmm.
But aside from that, it'd be nice to, as most people I agree, And this is talking with my coworkers who are a mixture of ethnicities from whites, Italians, Hispanic, Asian, is that we all want to live in a safe community where we can get out, go to the store, spend our money, see the kids raise, grow old, and enjoy what there is in life, whether that's entertainment, sports, going to the opera, theater, um, just as we say, chilling at the house. That's that's basically what I would want.
Yeah.
Um, to be able to go back and travel, to see the world out there, the other things that are out there.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. Well, thank you, Dad, for figuring out this whole Instagram thing and having a little
Okay.
chat with me today. It was very nice chatting with you, especially on something that I'm not used to seeing you on. So it was cool, and I appreciate your thoughts and sharing your ideas with everyone. So thank you.
Always available to you. Love you.
Thank you, Dad. Love you too. Thank you,
Bye.
everyone, for watching. Bye.